what we have here is a panel dosing system that is currently in fault. These have a lockout timer, so it will attempt to dose acid, and if it does not reach its desired set point within a time limit, on this unit that time limit is 120 minutes. So this will attempt to dose for 2 hours before it stops dosing and gives up on trying to reach its set point. As you can see here, it's in error. You do need to investigate why it's not achieving its set point in that period of time. Reasons it could be doing that is if the pump is off and you have a fault with the flow switch, which is very uncommon. Another reason could be that one of your injectors is blocked. To clear the fault, the easiest way to do so is simply just turn the unit off. There's a switch on the side, power on, power off. Turn it back on. Wait for it to boot up. And as you can see, we've cleared the fault. It has a 1 minute timer when it starts up before it starts dosing again. And this is for the probe to accurately sense what's going on with the water. The probe uses an electronic measurement to get the pH and millivolt reading. So the pH will come back up to what it was before. Once this 1 minute is over, it's going to attempt to dose acid. So we'll check that there is actually acid, and there is. We can see that the peristaltic tube is not ruptured, and we can see that the liquid is moving through. The acid's moving through the line. And we know this by seeing that air bubble pass through the line. So now we need to work out why it hasn't achieved its set point. I'm going to try turning off the filter pump and see if there's an issue with the flow switch. So the controller has gone into a hold mode. This means that the recirculation pump, what we call it is the filter pump, is off. So we know this is working. For this to try and bring the pH down, we're going to wait and see what happens here. If you wanted to speed up this process, if you select menu, there's acid pump. You can just add 10 seconds at a time to make it dose manually for up to 90 seconds. And this will speed up that process of dosing the system with acid. But we're just going to leave it in auto and see if that pH comes down. Another reason it could be doing this is if this chemical probe is out of calibration, which is not typical. I'd say that what's happened here is the pH was just over the set point, and it stayed just over the set point for a little bit too long. And because it stayed just over that set point, we can check the set point by going to menu, pH options, go to setup. Here's the set point at 7.4. So it may not have quite achieved that set point in 120 minutes of dosing, because as it reaches its set point, it slows down how much acid it doses. So this is on the maximum. So what this could be is the acid might be a little bit too dilated. This particular system has a sculpture, and as the system runs and the water aerates, it drives the pH up. So it's constantly going to be fighting that. So everything seems to be working, it just never achieved its set point. So that's how you correct that fault. We can see the pH has come down. Now it's going to start dosing chlorine. It's not waiting for the pH to correct itself. So in our case, it was just as simple as turning the unit off and on and clearing that fault to reset the timer. So we've waited a little while for this to correct itself, and what I've found is it's not dosing any chlorine. So both the pH and chlorine have a timeout option. This one times out after 100 minutes. And I'm going to set this to dose chlorine manually. To do that, just go menu, go to the pump and just go on 10 seconds, add 10, keep adding 10 seconds. Now what we can see here, as it is trying to pump this way, the chlorine's not getting through, and every now and then it's shooting back a bit of the pressure in this line. We can see it just there. So what's happened is this isn't dosing chlorine because there would be a blockage in the injector. So we're going to turn both of these off so that we don't dose any chlorine or acid, so they're both in manually off. We will turn off the pump, isolate either side of these injectors, and I'm going to get a tool to check these. Okay, so we're going to pull apart the chlorine probe. So I'm just using a multi-grip. You get these at any hardware store. I'm going to untwist this dosing line. So that's undone. Now, what I'm doing is I've got a damp rag here, and I'm going to catch that line in this damp rag so I don't drip chlorine everywhere, and I'll just wrap that up and set it back behind the pipe here. So you can see this dripping. You can see it's blocked in here already. Now it's not good to mix these two chemicals together, so you should only ever do these once at a time and rinse the area down with some water in between each injector so you don't mix the chemicals. The reason I've got the rag over this while I'm using the tool is so I don't damage the plastic on the injector, and it just doesn't look nice when it's all scratched up. So I try and keep everything a bit cleaner. So that's just water coming out, that's fine. So this is what the injector looks like. I'm not sure if we can see in here, but in there is a blockage. So the easiest way to clear this is to pull back this rubber. I'm just doing this with my hand, and you can see all that calcium build up. This is normal with chlorine injectors. So I'm just going to clean this up. Okay, I'm just at our eye wash station. So this isn't cleaning off by hand. And when this isn't cleaning off by hand, you need to use a chemical to remove the calcium. And the best chemical to use to do this is acid, but using acid we're going to be mixing two chemicals together, so this is something you do outdoors in a ventilated area with plenty of water around you in case something happens. So I'm just going to get this set up. So here I have just a very small amount of hydrochloric pool acid that's been diluted, about 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 diluted with water. And I'm just going to drop this straight in there. Now I have a hose here running alongside me so that if there is a reaction to any chlorine in here that I may have missed while I was washing it out, so I can just dilute the mix instantly. So that'll fizz and bubble a little. And this is pretty much the only way to clean out these injectors. If you start seeing any kind of vapors or anything coming off this, you're getting a reaction that you don't want. All you want to see is just a little bit of bubbling with no smell. This is something to do outdoors and with full PPE. So you should be wearing gloves and a face shield ideally while doing this, and a respirator would be good too, rated for chemical use. So you can see that's cleaning up quite nicely. This is going to take about a minute, so we'll come back again soon. Okay, this has been sitting in this solution for about 2 minutes now, and there's not really much bubbling happening, no real reaction happening anymore. So I'm just going to take the hose and just dilute that mixture and just keep diluting it. And the reason we just keep diluting it so it's just gets to a point where it's no longer acidic, so it's safe to handle. Alright, I'm happy with that. So that should now be all clear, and I'm going to test this by seeing if, while on the hose, if water comes out of these two holes here. You don't want too much pressure doing this, you only need a little bit. So as we can see, there's nothing coming out of those holes, so it's still blocked inside there. There's a blockage in between here and here. So I'm gonna remake that acid bath and soak it again, and we'll speak soon. Okay, I've remade the acid solution, and I have the injector fully submerged here in the acid, and I'm still not really getting much of a reaction. So something's wrong inside this injector, I'd say. It's pretty old. So I'm going to unblock it as best I can and then recommend to the client here that they should really replace this injector. Just avoid this happening again. These are a replace as you go item, as the manufacturer states. If this kind of issue keeps happening and this keeps trying to dose and can't move any chemicals through, it wears down these peristaltic tubes a lot faster, and it's really important to keep those injectors clear so that you're not just wearing away these tubes and you end up having them break, which is definitely not going to be ideal to have chlorine or acid spilling out on the floor in your plant room, whether it's indoors or outdoors. So I'm going to soak this one and see if we can get it working again. So after soaking it for a good few minutes, I'm just going to see if I've managed to unblock it. And that's not too bad. That's better than I'd hoped. Still going to recommend replacing this, but we've got it working, and that should be alright until our next service. This system gets serviced once a month, and even with once a month, you can still run into issues. So now that hasn't been dosing for how long I don't know, since the last service, I know that when I go up to clean the water feature, I'm probably going to have to drain and clean it, and there'll probably be algae or bacteria growing up there in the display, and I'll have to deal with that and get it all nice and clean. And yeah, so now that we've finished doing the chlorine injector, before servicing the next injector, I'm just going to pour some water over, so if there's any chlorine that got left behind from that work that we just did, it gets washed away and doesn't potentially drip onto anything that comes out of here. So all this is back together, everything's been serviced. I'm just going to test the acid pump with the filter on. So we'll add 10 seconds, we'll just test that chlorine. Oh, and there we go. As you can see, we've got that air bubble making its way up the line. So that fault has been successfully dealt with. And hopefully we don't have to deal with that again anytime soon. Once you finish this, make sure it's all set to auto. You can go away for a little bit and come back and just make sure that this comes back up. And that's that. So I've had this running for about 10 minutes, and still the ORP level's not coming up. And I'm just inspecting these chlorine lines, and what I can see is all calcium that I couldn't see before in this line. Whether it's calcium or the peristaltic tubes are wearing down, I'm not too sure. So what I'm going to do is stop this from dosing, turn that off. I'm going to isolate this again, so turn off the filter pump. I'm going to isolate these valves. So this line is isolated. That just goes to the makeup water, which is shut. So now I'm going to take this off. Wearing gloves. I'm going to take this off. And once this is off, I am not going to catch it with the rag. I'm going to sit it in this tub, and I am going to turn it on manual and flush this line through, because whatever is going through this line is not getting through the injector. So this line isn't flushing out as quick as I like. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to disconnect it from here. I'm going to flush water through it with the hose. So let's do that. So now, after flushing that line with water, it's clear. In the time that I was pumping into this cup, you can see all these contaminants. So what that looks like to me is crystallization from the
chlorine. So what's happened here is at some point we've been given a bad batch of chlorine, or at least one bad drum of chlorine. So if I look in here, I may find that no, it looks alright. So it must just be whatever was in the tube there. Anyway, these are the typical things that happen with water features and dosing pumps, and just things to watch out for. But this is not a very common occurrence, something like that to happen.